Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. It is Friday, September 8th. We're going to have John O'Shea to come on in a little bit later and tell us about, give us an update about the Paxton impeachment. But today, and of course, we've got the Q&A, so get your questions in. But today, we're going to play a little game. It's called Which Rust Belt State Would Nikki Haley Have Won? And then I'm going to give you the entire breakdown about what happened and why you saw that poll yesterday. We're going to get into a lot of the donor stuff that, like, I told people on locals yesterday. So if you were on locals yesterday and you're gonna hear a little monotony, but the rest of everybody else is not, and they don't know what's going on. All right. But this was the first time we saw the same psyop rehatched from 2016. And immediately it worked on a lot of people, or on several people. This was in the bag. It was canned, and it's fake. It's not real. If you live in a universe where Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, and Chris Christie outperform Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis against Joe Biden, you live in an alternate world. Okay, not the world, this world, the real world. All right. And if you got duped by that, I'm thinking about you, Clay Travis, then, this is why the Republican Party has the problems it has. The guy who took over for Rush Limbaugh was duped and then took a tantrum when Jack Posobiec, threw the receipts on him. And all sorts of strange behavior. If you think somebody calling you out for things you have said in the past to give people now a motive for why you would be pushing something so unbelievable and so contrary to not only reality, but the rest of the evidence that is available to us, right? So it can only be defined as a psyop, the reaction yesterday, when we know the polling consensus, the rest of the universe, and then 4 cycles of empirical data from elections, not from polling, all tell us the same thing. All right, so we're going to go over it today. We're going to play a little bit game. I chose Pennsylvania because we haven't looked at other states. But again, let me just say this as clear as I can before we move on. It's not real, folks. It's not real. If you think that Nikki Haley would do better in the Rust Belt, or Mike Pence or Chris Christie, then you are probably either you're new and you've never been through this before, and then for that I'll give you a little bit of leeway, even though nobody listening to this show should have ever looked at that poll yesterday and said, oh, that makes sense. You should know better. And if you don't, then I'm failing at my job and I need to do it better. Trust the polling tranches. Trust the tranches, baby. That's what we're going to have to say from now on. Trust the tranches. Did we or did we not on Tuesday use the CNN SSRS poll to show, as an example, how polls move in and out of different tranches and how tranches are used to not only identify trends, but to identify a bias in a particular poll? When it comes to CNN, what I'm going to say is very plain and very simple. After all of the years that I have observed what they have done, SSRS included, because they had changed throughout different times. After all of the phone calls nobody was supposed to be listening to between the polling desk and the pollster and the news desk and how they were going to cover the polls, I do not believe them at all. I think they are beyond dubious. I don't think this is a methodological error. We just recently, not long ago, polled Nikki Haley, and she was at 34%. She, at that time, was trailing 6 points behind Ron DeSantis. She was underperforming Ron DeSantis by 6 points. She was losing independents badly to Joe Biden. No Republican consolidation because they don't like her. The Republican base doesn't particularly like her. Mike Pence is somebody who has, in some polls, a negative 60 plus favorability rating with his own party. Chris Christie is the most disliked Republican politician in the world. And yet we're supposed to believe her and those two are outperforming Republicans. Folks, it's not real. It's bogus, is what I'm saying. It's not real. All culminating with this.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it.
So all of these Nikki Haley supporters and donors and fake bots on Twitter and everybody else and the Clay Travises of the world, well, he didn't do it, so I'll give him a pass on it. But they were all ready for this poll as if they had pre-prepared all of the things they were going to say about it. And then ended the night last night sharing Dick Cheney's attack on Donald Trump. And by the way, you got to address the cat. He's a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. Are you friggin' kidding me? This is a guy, Darth Vader, who lied not only to his supporters, but the entire country and member nations, members of the UN who are allies of us, and then used British intelligence to blackmail the people, the decision makers, the policy makers from allied states to support our unjust and illegal war in Iraq that he lied about to get us into. Nations didn't want to support our illegal invasion. No problem. Let's blackmail. Let's catch the diplomat's wife having an affair and then blackmail them to take back to their superiors that they need to support this resolution. That's the stuff this guy did. And by the way, the late Colin Powell, Mr. Valor himself, did the same damn thing. He was totally in on it. And the British helped us. That's a guy who's going to talk to us about anything, about misleading people? Are you kidding me? Anyway, by the way, 20 years ago, they wanted to kill him. The left wanted to kill him. They wanted him and George W. Bush tried at The Hague for war crimes and hung. Were you not old enough to remember those protests? I do. Slate magazine actually published some of that stuff. Op-eds. Try them. See where it leads. Now he's a hero. So don't tell me a news agency that's supposed to be credible isn't willing to fudge responses in order to get the donors and the Republicans in a trap. Because I'm not there yet. We got John coming up at 12:30, and I want to go specifically into the states and the data before we get into the backstory. So we're going to do this now. Then we're going to do John, and he's going to give us an update on the impeachment of Ken Paxton, which is just incredible. If you have not been watching, it's just incredible. And then we'll go back to the inside story that you don't know about. And the media has been giving you glimpses of, but you really don't know what's going on. And why, if you did that poll yesterday, be like, of course. And by the way, it's not only to screw Donald Trump and not only to screw the Republican Party's chances of winning as a whole, and goading donors into spending more money that they should be spending on registering voters and getting people on the permanent absentee ballot list. Specifically in this case, the closest victim of this scam is Tim Scott. So the neoliberal, neocon establishment, corporate corrupt media all came together to screw a conservative black man. And judging by everything I heard yesterday, it worked. And it was they just need a little bit of a push. And you'll see what I mean. In the real world, there is no chance Nikki Haley is beating Joe Biden. There is no chance Mike Pence is beating Joe Biden. Mike Pence will probably lose his own state of Indiana. That's the truth. And he may even lose the state of Missouri. That's the truth. He's definitely going to lose North Carolina. He's definitely going to lose Pennsylvania. He's definitely going to lose Michigan. He's definitely going to lose Wisconsin. He may even lose Florida after what we saw in Florida last week. This is a total wipeout scenario. And yet CNN wants you to believe these people actually have a chance. They don't have a chance. This, again, is not a matter of maybe they must have polled too much on live call or no. That was a mixed mode survey and they fudged it. They just fudged it. Like they spiked the poll before Iowa in 2020 because it was unfavorable to Joe Biden. And they were screwing over Bernie Sanders. There has been numerous occasions. And by the way, they took Ann Seltzer down with them in that. And even Murray at Monmouth was on my side saying that there was no professional reason for that whatsoever. This is concerning. If you haven't listened to the leaked audio tapes of their polling desk discussing the results of polling before 2020, mocking people for supporting Donald Trump, mocking Hispanics, saying that they're just dumb and they like to follow machismo, If you don't think they're capable of this, take your head out of your ass. They absolutely are, and they have been doing it now for months, as we showed you on Tuesday. The rest of the primary field, the rest of the polling consensus had Trump up by anywhere between 15 and 30 points in the same month they come out with a DeSantis +2. DeSantis is in the low 20s. Trump is in the mid 40s to low 50s, and they come out with a 39-37 DeSantis +2. That's not an outlier. When a lead is that big, you don't get outliers like that. You get faked polls for the benefit of somebody's interest. Here we go. Let's look at Pennsylvania. This one's a little bit more in depth, okay? Oh, you know what? Real quick, before we go over it, because I saw, and I don't know his real name, but I saw several accounts defending me yesterday, and I really got to give them a shout out. Real political data, of course, Seth, a bunch of them, and these idiots from Nikki Haley's campaign and the Never Trump movement, who were like, I need a non-biased source to convince me the Trump or bust vote is real. Aren't you supposed to be? And some of them are just idiot loser usernames that nobody even knows, but others were supposed strategists and on the Republican side of the aisle. Aren't you supposed to have some basic math skills? Can't you look back at the previous 4 cycles and even further? By the way, I'm going back to 2012 right now and tell from, a little thing called numbers that the Trump or bust vote is 100% real. I'm just the first one to find it, identify it, and study it. I didn't even come up with the phrase myself. I got it from voters we repeatedly heard it from. Here is, again, we're going to go through some you have seen before. Here's Dave over at Suffolk, and Dave used exactly the same phrase. Exactly the same phrase. Why? Because he got it from me or he heard it from voters. I'm even willing to say that maybe Dave heard it from voters. And what he's saying here is just basic statistically, nearly every single one of DeSantis' voters will vote for Donald Trump against Biden. But only 8 in 10 of Trump's voters will vote for DeSantis versus Biden, as slice as Trump or bust. For those of you who don't know what that resulted in, this is the state of Ohio. And as you can see it right there, it results in Trump obviously winning the state of Ohio overwhelmingly, and it results in DeSantis being in a very tight race with the current president. All right. For instance, in Iowa, we saw the same thing, and it resulted in basically the same margin for Donald Trump that you see right there. And it resulted in a very close race in the state of Iowa. In Mitchell Research put up the same thing. He put it out in a press release. Donald Trump was basically tied with Joe Biden. It was a 2-point race, and DeSantis was losing by 13 points in the state of Michigan. It's everywhere. This is not a novel concept. We all know that it's been around for a long time, a rather long time. But the fact is, it's about time we study it I thought it was, because it's the number one question in this election. People were saying, well, I mean, is it true that there are more people who are willing to only vote for Donald Trump than there is people who are willing to vote against him? And the only question is, who is right about that? Is the group that is anti-Trump larger than the group that is pro-Trump or only Trump, not just pro-Trump, only Trump? And after studying this for a while, as we have, the answer is very obvious. The people willing to vote for Trump are much bigger than the people who are willing to vote against him, especially since we have seen such a dramatic shift. And this concept that only, Trump is the weakest candidate, like Clay Travis. This is the guy who took over for Rush Limbaugh. So no wonder why Republicans are a mess, and they're weak, and they're cowardly. The guy fell for the very first psyop. I remember listening 2015 and 2016 the whole damn time. You were seeing polls, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they're all stronger. Trump loses by double digits to Hillary Clinton, but Jeb Bush is up by 2. Cruz is competitive. Marco Rubio's got a 1-point lead. And I always just said to myself, and to everybody who followed me on Twitter at the time, which was nowhere near the size it is now, which Rust Belt state are they going to flip to put together an electoral college victory? Because Virginia's not coming back. Not then. And Rush grabbed onto it. And he was like, you know what? This is the only question. That's how you know the media's lying. That's how you know they're really afraid of Donald Trump. That's how you know they're gaslighting. This isn't subjective. I'm not giving you my opinion. Back then, Rush wasn't giving you his opinion. Put aside your stupid feelings, because that's what you don't think anything, apparently. You feel. You're scared. Clay, you're afraid. And you feel that he's the weaker candidate. You don't think anything, because if you thought about it, you wouldn't have got bodied by Cernovich on Twitter the way he bodied you. This isn't close. If you take a second to look at the empirical data, it's not even remotely close. And we're going to go over Pennsylvania in a second, but this is the governor's own home state. How do you think Nikki Haley would do here? Nikki Haley is losing Florida. Do you understand? She's going to lose Florida, a state everyone thought was so solidly red. DeSantis is going to edge it out. I believe that. I know that the polling is very close, but I know I've polled Florida more accurately than anybody for over a decade. And I'm telling you, he underperformed in 18. Most of the time, Republicans underperform. He'll leak it out. But it'll be closer than anybody really wants it to be. It'll look like maybe 2016. Rich, you won by almost 20 points. Gubernatorial elections have no predictive value for presidential performance. So get that out of your head. We have to get a little tougher now, folks, because the myths have to be destroyed now. The nonsense talking points have to be destroyed now. People are being imprisoned, folks, for half of their natural life, for nonviolent crimes, because they are political dissidents. I don't have time for anyone's feelings anymore. If Rush Limbaugh was alive right now, how do you think he would respond to what happened yesterday? And then the person who took over his own show, either falling for it hook, line, and sinker, or being so dishonest, he pushed it himself. Which one is it? It's even in Florida. It's even in states like Tennessee. Here's Mark Cunningham. He is the spokesperson for the Beacon poll. They poll for local outlets. Obviously, Tennessee is a safe red state, although for a long time, Republicans thought a state like Missouri was. Indiana was clearly trending their way. Then they nominated John McCain, and he got his ass kicked and lost it and nearly lost the other one. Okay, we'll wait. These primary results reflect what we've seen in national polls for months. What do you mean? I thought that thought national polls don't matter, Mark. That a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is the most likely scenario in 2024. It is interesting that Trump fares substantially better against Biden than Ron DeSantis does. And this time, I'm not picking on Ron DeSantis. It's just that DeSantis was the second runner-up until everybody, the Murdochs and all the donors turned on him, and he collapsed in the polls. So all of this, we have been studying the Trump or bust vote mostly with him, but it's everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's Ron DeSantis. So this time, I'm actually defending Ron DeSantis today because he's getting screwed. But that's why you don't make alliances with these people, Ron. Now you learned better, didn't you? Now you learn the hard way. They were never your friends. You got used. And that's your own fault. You're a grown-ass man. You should have known better. So I don't feel bad for you, but you are getting screwed here. It is interesting that Trump fares substantially better against Biden than Ron DeSantis does. And the change almost exclusively from Republican vote came almost exclusively from Republican voters who say they would vote for Trump as their nominee, but would not vote at all if DeSantis were the nominee. And the claims I heard yesterday that 30% of people's, vote, don't come, and don't not show up because they nominated another candidate is ludicrous. Of course they do. Look what happened the last time the Republican Party screwed over their voters. What happened? Ross Perot happened. 25% of Bernie's voters didn't vote for Clinton in 2016. Depending on the battleground state, some of them went to Trump. Others just didn't vote. Nationally, Trump got about 11% of that vote. Third-party candidates got another 10%. And about 7% didn't vote at all, or 6% didn't vote at all. So just about 3 in 4 of Bernie's voters were counted on to support Clinton. That's it. That is what we are seeing right now. Even though 30%, roughly 28 to 30% say, I'll write in Donald Trump. And another, depends, 3 to 5% say they won't vote at all, because now we've expanded how we're studying this. Some of them, in fact, do say when we push them, yeah, all right, I'd vote for him. But 95% of them who say they're going to write him in. 95%. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at what we're up against, what they'd be up against here. 2012, total Democratic turnout, turnout in 2012, a little over about 5.8 million, 5,753,670 in the state of Pennsylvania. Barack Biden kicked Mitt Romney's ass by over 5 points, 5.4%, 5.38 to be exact. He beat him by nearly 310,000 vote margin. Somebody in the mold of old Nikki Haley, in fact. As you can see, while the Southwest, went largely, not the whole thing, because you do have to look at counties like Allegheny. I separate Allegheny in our poll so you can see better. And I also separate Dutch country from the Southeast, because the Southeast, like Montgomery and Delaware, will just completely suck up all the oxygen out of that sample. But you can see turnout was kind of low in 2020. It collapsed, and Republicans thought even if Barack Obama still maintains his black base, turnout will collapse, and we will have shifted enough white suburban voters, sound familiar, to beat Barack Obama. Except the case of the missing white voter happened. Sean Trendy, before he went crazy, because he's nuts now, he's totally nuts. He has lost his mind. And before everything that benefits Trump whatsoever, he needs to change his entire worldview on, just to avoid stating it. Once upon a time argued, it is because Republicans do not have a platform like Donald Trump, they cannot get out these certain voters. And gee, it reminds me a lot of the Ross Perot coalition. And across the North and the Midwest, it's a little over 3 million votes. And that's why Mitt Romney lost. He could have won. And that is true. Because Republicans can't get these voters out. Fast forward to 2020, before we talk about 16, the real problem, the big problem, is that this isn't even a Ross Perot coalition anymore. Demographically, as far as income, socioeconomic status, ideological spectrum, very, 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 very similar to the Ross Perot voter. There is one, however, very big difference. The regions that we find these voters in has expanded. The number of regions has expanded. It is not just so largely invested in the Midwest and the North. It's everywhere, including the South, which could cause Republicans to lose southern states, especially when you consider it's a lot less white than the Ross Perot coalition. And it's bigger. It's a lot more than 3 million votes. A lot more. Fast forward to 2016. Turnout actually increases, by the way. This is another fallacy you hear from the Never Trumpers. Turnout increases, especially where it matters. North Carolina, the Midwestern states, Florida. And Donald Trump carries the state of Pennsylvania by swinging it. You can't just even say, 350,000 votes. We've gone over it in very great detail about the different areas within the state of Pennsylvania. And in fact, I'm going to bring that up. Hold on one second. I'm going to give me 2 seconds. I'm going to bring it up. We're going to talk about it in a second because after we go over these graphics, because it's already 12:28. The bottom line is here, folks, what flipped? Let me bring it up because I know we got John coming up here really, really, really soon. When you look at a state like Iowa, as white as it is, actually is a great predictive indicator because it has the largest number of pivot counties out of any single battleground state. Out of any single state, actually, but of course it would be a battleground. 31 pivot counties. But in the state of Pennsylvania, that's really not the case. Erie, Luzerne, and Northampton were the major flips to Trump in 16. Chester County, actually, which voted for Romney, barely, but it voted for Romney, flipped to Clinton. Chester is now becoming a lot more like Delaware and Montgomery. Only Erie and Northampton flipped back in 2020. The Trump or bust margins are what maintain competitiveness. Trump he lost it by less than 1.2%. Look at the metropolitan, look at the municipal map on 2020. I did that for a reason, because while Erie, which is the northern western county, the little jagged edge that's hanging off in the northwest in Pennsylvania, while Erie, and then you can see on the far eastern is where Northampton is. It's that. Look all the way to the east, dead central on the eastern border. All right. And you can see the difference between was blue in 12 and 16. That's Northampton County. I'm trying to show you the municipal map of this just so you can see how clearly these Trump or bust voters impact the rest of, even if you lose Northampton or something like that. He still could have won it. It is only because of how many more votes he squeezes out because of these Trump or bust voters that the state even remains competitive. Nikki Haley is going to be crushed everywhere else that Mitt Romney and Donald Trump got crushed, plus some. She has no chance to carry Northampton. None. She has zero chance to carry Erie County. None. And this whole theory, the whole theory is based on the fact that she can do better in southeastern Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see the red in Bucks. You think she's going to win Chester back? How? The only reason you can look at Chester, the only reason it didn't get totally blown out from Donald Trump is because some of the western and northern parts of Chester, he got so red, it countered how blue the rest that back up against the rest against southeastern Pennsylvania, how much more blue they got. You think she's going to do better enough with college-educated voters in southeastern Pennsylvania that it's going to somehow alleviate the rest of the Trump or bust votes? Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And if John can give me 1 second here, bear with me. I'm going to explain why that is total and utter nonsense. And the only way you can see that is if you look at what it is that caused the 2012 to 2016 shifts, okay? Like Michigan, the Keystone State has gone for a Republican on the presidential level, has not since 88. Unlike Michigan, low turnout in Democratic strongholds is not the reason Trump beat Clinton. In Philadelphia, she came out with a 57,000 vote lead, which was down slightly from Obama's 479 and 492, by the way, that he got in 2020 in 08, excuse me. But that wasn't due to turnout. It was due to vote preference. The turnout levels were roughly the same. She outperformed John Kerry in 04. Obama got 85.2% of the vote. She only got 82.4%. He crushed Mitt Romney's performance in the urban area, both in 16 and in 20. He crushed him. So that leaves the suburbs and whether or not you can get enough out of the Appalachia counties to be able to compensate for how you're going to lose the suburbs anyway. Because, by the way, in 2012, 2022, we saw some fantastic non-bomb throwers running in southeastern Pennsylvania, and guess what? They still got killed. Dr. Oz was a celebrity for Senate, by the way, and he did do better among educated people. He did. He just didn't get out the Trump vote, so he lost. Everything for Oz's victory was baked in the cake. He didn't get them out, so he lost. The rest of the state is how Trump won. He flipped the rest of the state. Obama only lost it by 270,000 votes against Mitt Romney. Are you ready? Trump clobbered Clinton by 630,000 votes. 630,000. A vote total that it didn't even shrink. Turnout increased. He maintained it against Biden, but the vote increased. And it increased in areas, obviously. Well, I'm not going to get into it. We all know the deal. He, all over the Rust Belt, he was flipping municipalities that voted for Obama, excuse me. And that, of course, is how we got Erie County. Look at the municipal map. You can see that tiny little blue. That's what gave Joe Biden his edge. It was light blue in 16. All right, but Joe Biden got a lot of late arriving ballots that flipped Erie County. Erie was still Trump territory 2-3 days after the election, I think, 4 days after the election. Ridiculous, I know. 52 out of the 67 counties in the state of Pennsylvania are Appalachia, and they cast 44% typically of the Keystone State vote. They went big for Trump by under 500,000 votes. You know how much they went for Romney? 176,000. Just under 500,000. When I say under 500,000, I mean 497,000. Mitt Romney, 176. That's it. And we're to believe that Nikki Haley is going to put up that performance. I'm sorry. If you believe that, I'm going to get a little bit more brutal with people. If you believe that, you're stupid. And I'm sorry. I can't friggin' help you. All right, let's take a break, and then I'm going to tell you what was behind all of this nonsense anyway. Why did you even see this poll to begin with? What's going on behind Republican closed doors for the donor class and the ruling class? And then what possibly motive did CNN have to do this? Let's first, though, bring in our buddy John O'Shea, because I think you need to start to reconcile that these people are willing to do everything and anything. All right. Great example of that is the impeachment of Ken Paxton. John, thanks for joining Inside the Numbers as always. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Rich. How are you? It's good to be on with you.
Living the dream as always, John, but deeply, deeply concerned. Peter Navarro was found guilty after 40 minutes of conversation yesterday. That's a real jury. You have this thing with Ken Paxton going on, which I want to talk to you about, but it's everywhere. You have, Brian Kemp and company, working with Democrats and establishment rhinos to try to remove Trump from the ballot in a state he absolutely needs to be on the ballot in, and all doing it under wraps without the media reporting on any of it. Of course, you have the McCainites in Arizona assisting the Kemp and Bush wings, because the Bush wing is behind it in your state, assisting them in helping the Republican Party commit suicide, while CNN puts out fake polls and laughs at how dumb they are for believing them. I just can't take it anymore. But can you give us the latest? I mean, it's not that I can't take it. I'm just done being so nice about it. That's it. I mean, listen, I don't know whether you support Peter Navarro or not. I don't really care. I know Peter. He's always been, even when I was a nobody, he was always super good to me, a super nice guy. And I'm putting aside his politics. What happened with him yesterday made me sick to my stomach. And now I consider him a friend, by the way. Nobody should have to go through this, John, just so that same thing Ken is doing. Nobody should have to go through this all in the hopes that the Supreme Court rectifies what cost them $1 million. After $1 million, after your reputation, after terrible legal precedents have been set, this is disgusting. Give us an update on what's going on with Ken, though, because I'm watching this thing, brother, and I don't see any new evidence of any new crimes.
No, well, in fact, if you give me a little latitude, you
Sure.
kind of touched a button with me there, which is, first of all, why Washington, D.C. has its own jurisdiction for courts is beyond reason. And if Congress, if McCarthy, if any of those people had a brain and a spine, they would strip it and put it back under congressional control, because it is completely a partisan state where a Republican can never get a fair shake. And their abuses and violations of law are just rampant. And it just that, unfortunately, Peter Navarro is just the latest example.
And it's
So
just disgusting.
yeah,
It's
no, it's, I mean, and you've done the polling, so I mean, there's no way, there's no impartiality with that jury. And yet, you can't get a court to have a change of venue because people won't acknowledge the reality of it, that town is 95% hardcore left. The other thing I'd say, and this kind of speaks to that point as well, and you've been touching upon this, is that we are done with the neocon establishment uniparty rhino types. It is just egregious what they are doing to our party, and it's not their party. And I don't care if Pence wants to get on, 50 more interviews and lecture us about this is between conservatism and populism. Hey, news to you, Mike Pence, those aren't mutually exclusive. And in fact, I would say the people who are the populists, who are the MAGA, America First type, are way more conservative than you ever even dreamed about. And then you can sit there and lecture all you want and then explain to me why you're at 1% in the polls. How well is that message resonating throughout the crowd? These people are absolutely a travesty, and they are the danger to our party. Honestly, if they would get out of the way and we could just have the dichotomy of the radical left and their authoritarian Marxism and then true populism with a honest to God return to a constitutional republic type style government in the Republican Party, it would be night and day. But we can't, because we still have all this stupid bickering and infighting from these establishment types who don't understand their time has come and gone. They are the way of the dinosaur, and they need to recognize that. And why Ronna McDaniel is continuing to do this farce with the Murdochs and have all of these debates. Look, let's face it, Donald J. Trump is the presumptive nominee, and he is the only chance the Republicans have of not only recapturing the White House, but of honestly restoring this country. Sorry, just listening to you and your buildup, that just kind of really sparked a fire under me.
Don't apologize. I like to consider myself not on the side of any real candidate. I'm on the side of the voter, and that's the way I listen. People should know, people who have followed me, since the advent of America First and Trumpism, I was very much an advocate for Scott Walker. And it wasn't because I certainly love Scott Walker. It was because, and I'll tell you right now, that he was the first Republican candidate in my career, and I'm researching it, apparently the first one in decades, that voters both in New Hampshire and Iowa were saying, yes, we love him. And throughout the Rust Belt, when we would poll him, he would do much better. And there seemed to be a vote, not just from Republicans, but, the rest of the country that said, I like him. I find him at least to be honest. Then he collapsed because he went the way of those guys you just brought up, and he let the slime in, John, and they destroyed him. He let
the political consultants.
Yep. Yeah, George Will's wife, all this crap. And then Trump comes out of nowhere, and I didn't dismiss him like others did. This is a clown show. The moment he came down the escalator, I said, this is going to resonate with some. There is no doubt. There is synergy here between what we're hearing from him, Bernie's people. There is synergy. This will resonate. And then you get kind of like branded as a pollster of being pro-Trump if you simply poll him fairly and listen to what the voters are saying. And to me, it's like, I think a lot of people mistake what it is I do. This is what they want. You just laid it out. They don't want your asses anymore. I just put up on the screen before Malloy. She was supposed to lose this election badly. She was supposed to lose it badly. And Becky Edwards, who is as rhino comes. I mean, honestly, John, she's a liberal. There's no reason for her to even call herself a Republican outside of the fact that that's a solidly Republican district. And if you want to win a general election, you got to lie and say you're a Republican. There has got
I'm
to
familiar
be
with
this,
that.
yeah, you know it. You're running against one right now. Her name is Kay Granger in Texas 12, folks, by the way. This is a bigger part of the Republican conference, much bigger than people have to understand. They need to start realizing that this is what they're up against. Having an R after your last name does not make you a Republican, like having a D after your last name makes you a Democrat. And for those who didn't listen to Sebastian Gorka's interview with Steve Bannon yesterday, after Peter Navarro was found guilty, I strongly suggest you go back and do it. What Matt Gaetz was saying in that public statement that he released, he was trying to let you know that they're betraying you. They're never going to do these things that you're counting on them to do. These people have to be replaced. The number of people who stand with Matt Gaetz to defund and to fight back this police state nonsense is in the single digits in the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy is a fraud. He has to be dealt with. This is not going to get better the way you think it is, because Jim Jordan keeps writing nasty letters, putting out nasty tweets, and pretending he's going to hold people accountable. It's not happening. Let me be as blunt as I can. You think that Trump is going to somehow have allies keeping him on the ballot in these different lawsuits? He will not. I mean, this is the thing this is what pissed me off so much about the Nikki Haley poll, because this is an attempt, and we'll talk about it after I really want to get to Ken's impeachment, but really what it is an extension of keeping the party divided, because they don't want people to do what you just said, unite around what is very clearly, John, nobody has run this strong in a primary in modern memory. It's not going to happen. They're not going to beat him. This is all a scam. The truth is they're waiting to see if lawfare and the ballot removals work. They want to destroy this party. They want to wreck this party, all for their own personal ambitions. Either that or they're just too stupid to see what's going on. But the media and the Democrats are not. And they want the dumb donors who are obviously very good at making a lot of money, but terrible at politics and having their political handicap hats on. They want them to keep spending their money on the next grift. And Jeff Rowe can keep getting rich, right? While everybody else goes down the drain. This one gets 17 years. That one gets 15 years. Ken Paxton gets removed from office. Donald Trump gets removed from the ballot. Republicans get 50 million votes and they get their kicked. Tell us what's going on with Ken in Texas. I mean,
well, and just to draw a little connection to that, I mean, it's because those people don't attend the grassroots meetings. They don't go to the clubs. They don't deal with everyday people. So they don't understand their angst and the problems that they're personally facing. When they're at their country club, they're immune to it. So it's not surprising to me that the donor class doesn't get it and view us as deplorables. We've heard that for a while. But again, the connection here is what is being done to President Trump by the establishment, working hand in hand with the Democrat Party. I mean, you brought up, the Fannie Willis situation, and I think there was information that just recently came out that not only is Kemp and Raffensperger complicit in it, but the order came from the Department of Justice. Just like Matthew Colangelo was all of a sudden inserted from the number 3 spot at DOJ into Alvin Bragg's office, because that's a real step up in the world, just in time for the Trump indictments. Well, it turns out that we have the same situation working here with Ken Paxton. And I think the message is very clear. The Uniparty does not like effective leadership. They don't like people who are populists, who actually will do what they say they're going to do and actually listen to the will of the people and serve, because that doesn't suit their purposes. So what I think has come out here, I mean, just to kind of recap for people who weren't really aware, is that in the dying hours of the 88th Texas legislative session, there was this surprise announcement that there had been this secret investigative committee going on looking into violations of law for Ken Paxton and whether or not he was going to be brought up on impeachment charges in the House. Now, never mind the fact that the House failed to pass some of the key Republican platforms. Mind you, the Texas state government, over 60% of the Senate is Republican and over 60% of the House is Republican. It's a clear mandate by the people of this state. They want the Republican, platforms passed. Well, I mean, we're talking about key pieces too, like not even border security. They couldn't get a bill out on border security or school choice or a couple of other items that were high on Governor Abbott's
Pathetic.
wish list. So what did they do instead? Well, they focused on impeaching Ken Paxton. Why? Because he's the America First champion here in Texas, and he's a key Trump ally. How do I know that this is something that is being done by the Uniparty in collaboration? Well, as it turns out, it's not just Matthew Colangelo who leaves the Department of Justice and all of a sudden winds up somewhere surprisingly. We have somebody who was with the DOJ working with Merrick Garland, who all of a sudden just happens to leave the DOJ and then like days later is working for this special secret committee. Her name's Erin Epley, and I hope she becomes famous because then she hired an additional U.S. attorney out of Houston, which is, again, a very bastion of liberalism. And then they begin this investigative committee. Oh, by the way, the committee was called for by Dade Phelan, who is the Speaker of the House and supposedly a Republican, which I can assure you he's not. They were being funded by Texans for Lawsuit Reform, which take a look at that. And this has the Bush wing of the Republican Party who are mad about George P. Bush not being able to upend Ken and start to rise through the ranks like the next Bush, designee was supposed to, working with this feckless, lawless, unconstitutional administration. And unfortunately for the House, fortunate for the people of Texas, this thing is being played out publicly on camera, and it is being shown as a sham. The star witnesses for the House, who, by the way, gave their testimony to the investigator secretly away from the committee while not being under oath.
Incredible.
Then the investigators came and spoke to the secret committee while not under oath. And then the committee reported to the House floor while not under oath. So we're talking about hearsay on hearsay on hearsay. And oh, by the way, they talk about the fact that Ken violated the law. Well, the couple of inconvenient truths to predate that. Texas has a code called the prior election doctrine. It's Texas Code 665.
That's right.
And it states that a state government employee cannot be impeached for issues that were known by the public prior to the election. Well, guess what? Every single thing that they've brought out alleging that Ken had some illicit relationship with real estate developer Nate Paul,
right,
that was all known by the public. It was brought up by George P. Bush in the primary nonstop, and there were tens of millions of dollars spent.
And Louis Gohmert, by the way.
And Louis Gohmert, and then again in the general.
Everyone's giving him a pass, and he should. You know what? At this point, maybe you should thank him, John, because he was bringing up all of this stuff that now is good for Ken Paxton because this, not that they listen to the rules, though. I mean, John, that's the thing. It's like you have Louis Gohmert and you have George P. bringing up this stuff in the primary, in the second round, then in the general later. They give all the Democrats this fire to use, which triggers that rule. But they're just not listening to the rules. And this is as far as but I got to point out to people so they understand, for those who aren't following at home, the opposition, right? The response to what John and I are just saying really came in the form of, but there is new stuff you don't know about, and there's new evidence and new this and new that. I'm going to play a clip. It's only a couple of seconds here, 24 seconds. Ken Paxton's lawyers are doing a great job. I mean, a great job. And this clip yesterday, to me, John, I mean, this was it. I mean, are you kidding? I don't know what else to say after that.
Yeah, they're schooling the other counsel.
Yeah. Let's play this one. Then there's another one too, but we'll play this one. We'll go from there.
I want to get this straight. You went to the FBI on September 30th with your compatriots and reported the elected attorney general of the state for a crime without any evidence. Yes?
That's right. We took no evidence.
John, let me just get to 4 seconds here.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, that was Ryan Vassar, former deputy attorney general. So not some underling at the attorney general's office.
These people are Soviets, John. They're Soviets. And I don't care if it's Ken and Pat. I mean, of course, I care more about Ken because I know him. I don't know him as obviously like you do, but I know you. I trust you. Personally, I don't even care if he had an affair. I don't think anybody cares about that if that part is true. So I just don't know where they're coming out with this. The new investigation that they claimed they started, and that was all of it right there, John. That was it. You basically started an investigation using a pretext that had no evidence to back it up whatsoever. Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say to that. Does that require explanation to anybody listening to this show right now, what they just admitted? Folks,
Yeah.
if they can do this to Ken Paxton, I just watched the FBI throw somebody else again in jail yesterday. And then, of course, they didn't want anybody filming it for some relation to the January 6th events all these years later. It's like they absolutely can just come and get anyone, anywhere now for nothing. John, for nothing.
And so we're rewarding the FBI, by the way, with all the funding and for a brand new headquarters building in Washington, D.C. that's actually going to rival, if not surpass, the Pentagon, which we know the Pentagon was built to marshal our forces for the war against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Gee, I wonder what this new FBI office is being built to wage war against.
And where is the Republican Party? So, like, again, this is the main problem everyone needs to understand. And this is why people like John are running against Kay Granger, right? The Republican Party is not going to do anything about it. Nothing. They're not going to help you. You have to help yourself. And then they wonder, John, why there's a huge Trump or bust vote. Then they wonder why, and you hear all of these stupid idiots, I'm sorry, who support Nikki Haley and everyone else in the race not named Donald Trump saying, well, they're just a cult. You gave them no reason to trust you. The map I just went over in Pennsylvania, Trump gave them reasons. Ken Paxton gave them reasons. Why did Ken Paxton do so much better in South Texas than the rest of the Republican Party? Why did he do so much better? He
did what he said he was going to do.
He did what he said he was going to do. It really is that simple.
Yeah. The only thing I would disagree with you about, Rich, is that not that they didn't give people reason. It's that they've given plenty of reason for people not to trust them. We've seen this song and dance routine over and over again. It's just they know what the right buzzwords are to say. They know what the key phrases are. And then the moment they're in office, they're listening to special interests. They're listening to the donor class, and they've sold their soul. They forget that they're a servant to the people and to this country, not to an select few on the promise that they get to join their ranks.
I want to play this one more clip, and then I want to get your reaction to it, because I very much view you, John, as a truth teller. You are. And we are in this moment. And during opening statements, one of Ken Paxton's lawyers he got really passionate during it. And he made a comment, which I heard, it sounded a lot like something Tucker had recently said when he was, I don't know if he put it up. Yeah, he must have on Twitter, but the Hungarians wanted to ask him questions after he went to interview the prime minister. And and he was saying, that we're just in a world where you get punished. Those who tell the truth get punished. Those who lie get rewarded. And that's along the lines of what his lawyer says here. Let me just play this and let me get your reaction to that. Not only do you agree with it, but, at this point, where do you go from it? And of course, I want to get your take on where you think the finality of this is going to end up.
The direction he gave Mark Penley, who worked for him, was exactly the same direction he gave Brandon Kamick. Find the truth. We're going to impeach a sitting attorney general for giving the direction, find the truth. Not one person, not one piece of evidence will you hear where they say lie, where Ken Paxton told him to lie, cheat, steal, shade, do whatever it takes. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And yet here we sit with 31 of you, with 15 of us, and 15 or more of them. Here we sit when the allegation is it's correct. When the truth is, he said, go find the truth, for God's sakes.
mean, there it is.
Direction he
I mean,
gave
you know,
Mark
hold on. Let
Penley,
me
who
remove
worked
this
for-
here. Sorry, I don't want it to roll over again. But the bottom line is, oops, still going on my end. Sorry about that. I think he hit on something there that matters. It's not just everything Ken had told his team. It's like this culture of, you know, go out and see what's really going on, then relay to people what the truth is that's really going on, and then you get punished for it. So I feel like, you know, if it really is an ethos, John, like, so
Yeah.
it's an ethos that's being attacked here in this country everywhere. And I wanted to get your take on that. You know the man, you know him well. I just can't. I'm not surprised, is what I guess I'm saying. I'm not surprised that all of these promises that they made, they did not deliver on. Because I just didn't. You have a pretty good judge of character, and I just didn't believe it. You know, so what do you think? You know, what you know, from both your standpoint, as looking at it as the greater effort that they're doing in this country, but also as his friend.
So I 3 points. First of all, you're absolutely right. Truth is under absolute attack, and it's egregious to me. God, that's a word that's become common in my vocabulary, unfortunately, in this day and age. But anybody who's willing to tell the truth comes under just nonstop attack. I mean, whether it be transgender issues, whether it be critical race or social emotional learning, whether it be the flood at the border or the whole Ukraine debacle, or our government spending us into oblivion or destroying our own energy industry. If you tell the truth, you become a Putin puppet, you become a racist, you become, a homophobe or whatever it is. And frankly, most people aren't willing to have the spine to stand up and say the truth in the face of all that withering attack. So I think you're 100% right. And I think Tucker was spot on there as well. But we're commanded by God to seek the truth. In fact, in 2 Thessalonians, it says they perish because they failed to love the truth and so be saved. So I'm sorry, call me what you want to call me. But at the end of the day, there's one judgment on me that I concern myself, and it's not with the media or the people. The second thing I would say is that, unfortunately, there's another parallel here between President Trump and Ken Paxton, and that is, ooh, man, some of the personnel decisions these guys made, because these people were all hired by Ken. And one of the clips that you didn't show, but there is some stuff from the first day of testimony where his first assistant, Jeff Mateer, who was basically like his right-hand man, oh my gosh, that man was such a bumbling incompetent that he actually admitted to the fact that when Ken was out of the office, for example, he said specifically, when Ken was in Ohio working on the Google case, that he was leading this, class action suit of these different states against Google, that then Jeff thought that he was the acting attorney general. He actually had Ken's name removed from the letterhead so that as they were sending things out, it was coming from him. And when his Ken's counsel said, "Who voted for you?" and he was like, "Well, nobody," but it says well, he was relying on if Ken was under a general anesthetic or Ken was like in a coma or something like that, then he would be the acting attorney general. Not when Ken was out of the office performing his duties did all of a sudden this guy get to step up and replace Ken, supplanting 4.3 million Texas voters. So, I mean, that part as well is that, man, we've got to be more careful about closing ranks with people who we can have utmost confidence in. But then the last thing I would say is that this has just been a complete sham. Nate Paul, who is at the heart of all these allegations, a real estate developer out of Austin. For the record, I've been friends with Ken for 20 years. I know the man. I love the man. Whether or not he had, indiscretions in his marriage or in his professional life, that's beyond. I mean, I don't know anybody who is flawless unless, there just isn't. We're all human. It's the human condition. But what I would say is that I know he walked away from an incredibly lucrative law practice to first run as a state rep and then as a state senator. And then when he became attorney general, he gave his practice to his partners because he was precluded from practicing law at that point in time. And it was more important for him to be that watchman on the wall, which is why he is so beloved by people here in the state of Texas. Now, equally, I have never met Nate Paul, don't know the man from Adam. I kind of have a general sense of who he might be, just given having dealt with other real estate developers like him in the past in my community banking days. where he, made it big very quickly, became a "hey, do you know who I am" kind of guy. And look, he got into some legal skirmishes with a charity who, oh, by the way, had faced a couple of criminal indictments themselves. So it's not like we had some real clean actors on either side here. And that he was raided by the FBI, and he alleged a violation of his civil liberties. And guess what? Ken's very dubious of the authorities right now, and for very good reason, as we've seen,
with good
constant
reason.
violations by the FBI against all sorts of people's civil liberties. So when he asked his office to look into it, and they basically just kind of, stonewalled him, and he got furious, and they finally hired an outside independent counsel because Ken had accepted a campaign contribution from him, just like everybody else in Austin, basically. If you go back and look, Ken wasn't the only contribution that campaign that Nate Paul donated to, and nor was he the biggest. And oh, by the way, Nate Paul donated $25,000 to Ken's campaign, which raised $8 million. So it wasn't like that was something that moved the needle, and he got special treatment because of it. So he appointed independent counsel. And then, as it turned out, because there apparently were some other issues that really bore legitimacy, the actual Travis County District Attorney's Office made a second inquiry to the independent investigator. And when that guy was working under that auspice, the people who thought that they were the ones in charge, even though it was Ken's office, they panicked and they made that complaint to the FBI, even though they subsequently found out that there was a second independent inquiry from Travis County that validated everything, and that this independent counselor had actually been brought in under contract and was performing under the letter of the law. Did they go back and tell the FBI at that point in time, whoops, we made a mistake? No, they had already orchestrated their escape. They were already told, get fired, wipe out your emails, even though that violated, the state law. And they had already hatched this plan. They basically got caught trying to form a coup inside the Attorney General's office. And then, because the Department of Justice and because the Bush wing of the Republican Party were more than willing to collaborate, they turned this into a FBI investigation on Ken, which, by the way, where are those charges? It's only been, 4 years now? So they obviously didn't find anything. And so then they had to leave it to Dade Phelan, who is apparently the establishment, spokesperson du jour for the Republican Party down in Austin.
Yeah, let me say, because I had retweeted what you had said, which was, for those keeping up with the Ken Paxton sham trial, at least we know why the House didn't put these people under oath as required, by the way. And we also know why they deleted their texts and their emails. I mean, this is just, to me, again, more parallels, right? So you have this,
well, in fact, and just for the record, in case you need to know, go look at Texas Code section 301.022. It speaks about witnesses under oath, and it specifically says that an investigative committee cannot waive it. The witnesses have to be under oath. And they violated the law to bring up these charges. So yeah, it just, they make a mockery of it. And that's the one thing that I would say, and speaking to your point previously about the McCarthy wing of the party, is that the Uniparty makes no bones about, they don't care about the rule. They don't care about principle. They only care about what favors their position. Now, I'm not saying that we throw out standards, but by God, when we have power, we need to exercise it.
Yeah. And just as, for people who actually, think that this is some about something else, look at our now sitting Vice President Kamala Harris, or Kamala, however the hell you're supposed to say her first name. I don't care. When she was the Attorney General, she took money from the Archdiocese so she didn't have to prosecute. And by the way, did not refuse to prosecute any abuse by the Catholic Church on little boys. That's documented. Peter Schweitzer. Also, she took money from Planned Parenthood like crazy. Wasn't even going to go after David Daleiden until she got a phone call from them. And then all of a sudden he became, California's most wanted. I mean, this has happened before, and nobody has ever. And in Ken's case, it's totally different, because here in those cases, what you have are donors and, benefactors calling up the politician and saying, punish someone for us, or refuse to punish someone for us. In Ken's case, it was trying to defend someone's civil liberty who may have been abused. It's totally different. It's totally different than from what Ken may have done what they even alleged. That is a totally different principle, John, is my point.
No, 100%.
You
Ken was
understand what I'm
actually
saying?
exercising his office. I mean, he was
Protecting
protecting the
citizens.
people of
That's
the
right.
state of Texas
Totally
from corrupt federal government practices.
Right.
And in fact, here's the other thing I would say about it too, is that everything that they use, because Ken was under a gag order. So I was trying to publish as many articles as I could and get on and spread his story. But, for example, one of the more famous issues was that, Nate Paul was remodeling Ken's house. And then, Ken decided that he wanted granite countertops. Well, now under oath, these people have had to admit that they didn't know that Ken and Angela couldn't afford granite countertops, and they didn't opt for that selection. And that, oh, by the way, they had receipts from Home Depot and Lowe's for all the fixtures and things that were actually installed in their house during the remodel. So this was not some Nate Paul quid pro quo. Now, whether or not Nate Paul is guilty of anything else, frankly, if the FBI is involved in this, it raises my antenna to begin with now anyway.
They're a criminal organization, John. They're a criminal organization. Listen, I know it's dangerous to say things like that in these times. The FBI is a criminal organization. And the truth is, we had a false impression of them as the honest, educated G-man, G-men, G-women, whatever, for way too long. They never were what they pretended to be, and they sure as hell are not now. We forget about this.
But now they've been weaponized into the Gestapo.
That's
the
true.
reality of it.
Back then, it was just a matter of, they're dirty, and Hoover, he did weaponize them. But, there's a reason I bring this up a lot, but it's people get references to pop culture. Elliot Ness and his Treasury agents weren't untouchables because they were afraid Al Capone wouldn't kill them. They were untouchables because the FBI was so damn corrupt. They needed to bring in agents from the Treasury Department, and they were called the untouchables because their integrity was above reproach. Right. They could not be bribed. The FBI, on the other hand, were crooked as could be. All they did was hunt down people like John Dillinger and Babyface Nelson and, frankly, just straight execute them. That's all they did. That's where they got their pop culture status from. But from the very beginning, it was never true, John. Never. And then, it was run by the culture that was handed down to them, that was grandfathered in, was completely inherited from what Hoover, how he built and ran that agency. And, they're a criminal organization. I'm sorry. I mean, they are just one backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. It doesn't make it any better, brother. It doesn't make it any better. No. I mean, I'm sorry. I'd rather have the criminals. I'd rather have Babyface Nelson. I'm serious. And John Dillinger and hell, Al Capone run around than these people, because at least Al Capone didn't have unlimited resources. Once they come at you, you're done, John. You're done no matter what. They had no respect for anybody's civil rights in that arrest yesterday. No respect for that. And that's the way it has been. It's just that you don't get it on camera like that as often as you should, as everybody should. Just keeping people away from public areas where they can clearly move freely. They don't come on a street and get to shut it down in a shopping mall because they come to arrest somebody, or in a mini mall kind of capacity. That's not what you do. People are allowed to still be in the parking lot and be. This is crazy. It's just this. This is a Soviet society now, a Soviet style society, and I'm telling you. John, God bless you, because you threw your hat in the ring. But I'm telling you, there needs to be a whole lot more who need to do it, because there are a lot more Kay Grangers. There are a lot more Kevin McCarthy's. I'm sorry to say, even now, where the hell's Tom McClintock? He used to care about civil rights. He used to care about this stuff. He has totally gone the way of an establishment hack. And it's so sad to watch this. As it turns out, courage really is in short supply. As it turns out, it is a currency that is going to be extinct within a generation if we don't change the trajectory that this is all heading in. Speaking of trajectory, how do you think this is going to end up? You got the phones burning up with these senators. Yep. Don't you dare impeach this man. I was told that it probably would have. I was told that there simply is an interest group, that lawyers love, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, that we're able to make sure that the vote to dismiss basically went through, and that some of them, I don't know if this is, I don't want to give false hope here at all, but I was told by someone that they're trying to make Ken sweat and they're trying to make him squirm. And they, even if it doesn't succeed, that they wanted to hurt him, they wanted to put him through this. What do you think about that? Is there any validity to that, or do you think they are more confident that they can get a conviction here? What's your assessment? What's your feeling here?
Well, just real quick, back on the FBI arrest, I'll say at least in that situation, they didn't gun him down like they did two of the previous people they went to swoop up.
That's right.
As far as it goes with Ken, look, they obviously don't know the man very well, because the similarities are there again with President Trump. Ken has no back down because he has no fear. He honestly is a God-fearing man, and well, in awe of God. And as a result, he doesn't care what the attacks are. In fact, he had made out there is a kind of a veiled threat to the Bush establishment wing that, well, hey, go ahead and impeach me and then I'll run for Senate. And all of a sudden they had to do a double take and think, oh, that's right, that's a federal office. He actually could do it. He would win in a heartbeat. And I talked to him offline and he said, you know what, I've given it thought. And if they were successful in impeaching me, I am going to do that. So they're stuck dealing with Ken regardless one way or the other. And that's great news for the people of Texas, because we honestly love him, because like he said, character and courage are on very short supply. And unfortunately, the political class are dominated by narcissists. So
he's such a modest guy too. Like when you meet Ken Paxton, it's you see him as like a warrior in the media. And if it wasn't for Ken Paxton, half of Donald Trump's immigration policies would have failed, you know?
Right.
But when you meet him, he's like so meek and soft-spoken and nice.
He's just a nice, humble guy. Yeah, no, in fact, it's funny. Every time I've ever introduced him to anybody for a lunch or a dinner, or if we're out with drinks,
you think you're going to get a bomb thrower.
Yeah, no, I know. They think it's going to be like, visiting with the political version of Hulk Hogan or something. As it turns out, they go, wow, he's just a great, nice, normal guy. Like, yeah, I mean, he puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. But and he doesn't take himself too seriously, even if he does draw all this attack and attention. But as far as kind of my assessment of the situation, yeah, no, and look, I'm not loath to throw the name out there. It's Texans for Lawsuit Reform. They're the ones who've been throwing the money around and putting the pressure on, and they're big campaign contributors. And guess what? I'm not taking money from them. I don't care if they want to come at me. Do what you want, but I'll call you out because you're this corrupt part of the party that is just clinging to life support. And you're right. They were putting the call out saying, regardless of how you're ultimately going to vote, do not allow these charges to be thrown out, which they should have, because as we pointed out, the impeachment did not follow legal precedent. There was no even grounds for a predicate to bring these charges against Ken. But what you saw was there were routinely, because they were brought up individually on different charges, you had 8 stalwart conservative senators. There would have been 9, but Angela's been precluded from being able to vote given her obvious conflict of interest, even though I think she still should have been allowed to represent the people of her district. But you had 8 who held out and voted in favor of Ken every single time. And then on a couple of the other ones, you would have 1 or 2 kind of join over. So I think that we're there. I think you're right. I think the public pressure has been brought to bear, because let's face it, a lot of these people who are these rhino types don't have a backbone, and they'll cower to public opinion. And I'm telling you, I have never seen the grassroots. I have never seen the voter base more fired up in my life. There have been more motions of censure throughout every county GOP party and even the state party than I ever have seen in my entire life, all in the last 6 months, all dealing with this one situation. So, it's funny. I kind of came out there and I told you the last time we talked about this that I wanted to make sure I stood squarely behind Ken. And that's why I announced his endorsement at that point in time, because I didn't want to previously be a distraction, but I wanted to know that there was clearly public support. Well, look, hey, sometimes good deeds actually have good consequences. Hey, trust me, right now, that's the best endorsement in the state of Texas I could possibly have, because the people see this sham, they see this attack, and they see him standing up for what's right, and they know he's going to prevail. And when he comes through this, just like President Trump will after the 2024 presidential election, watch out, because he'll be stronger than ever.
Amen, John. I got to bring it to a close with that. But I would say this: could you imagine how dumb these people are? The Bushes, the Kemps, all of them. The remnants of the McCains. You're gonna have ads of drunken California Dave Fallon running constantly. Then they're gonna impeach Ken Paxton and depress voter turnout by God knows how much. I mean, do you want to lose? Do you want to be a minority in a dominant one-party rule country? Because that's what's going to happen here. And Democrats are just sitting back. In the case of the same thing with the CNN poll, they're just laughing all the way to the bank, which I'll get to on the other side of the break. They're laughing all the way to one-party rule in Georgia. They're laughing all the way to one-party rule in Nevada and Arizona, and they're trying in Texas. It'll be country one party rule. And these dumb idiots, I say it all the time, the Bushes, they're just so used to being a part of the ruling class. They don't care if they have a seat at the table as long as those guys don't. They're perfectly okay with the mutt dogs they are being on the floor at the feet of Democrats who are gorging themselves at that table, eating the crumbs that fall off, because that's the scum, filth, lack of character and principle people that they are. And it's disgusting. And people are over it. People are over it. So the rest of us who give any kind of voice to them have to be over it as well. And I'm in at that, John, God bless you for doing what few people do, which is saying, you know what, I'm in. It's John O'Shea, ladies and gentlemen, Texas 12. This is his handle basically everywhere. That's his website. But John, tell people where they can learn more about you.
Yeah, if people can please go visit me at OSheaforTexas.com. That's OSHEA, the number 4, Texas.com. I'm taking on a 14-term incumbent. I think most people think of her as a rhino. Frankly, I think of her as an old school Democrat who just changed from a D to an R. And right now, in this day and age, I mean, let's face it, this country has fallen. The only question now is, can we get back on our feet? And we have one election cycle to do it. We need as many America First patriots who are willing to sacrifice everything to see this country restored to its prominence as possible. So I need your help. If you could please check out my website. If there's any way, if you're in my district, be sure to get the word out. If you can't, or you're not in my district, if you would consider even a small donation, because while she's not doing well with public donors, she obviously is getting all the PAC and lobbyist money she could say grace over.
And I will say this as the People's Pundit, not as John's friend, but as the People's Pundit. She was almost beaten before, and the only reason why she wasn't is because Trump needed her impeachment vote. So he swallowed hard and supported her. But that's gone now. That's out. With your support, I'm telling you this again, as the People's Pundit, not as John's friend. With your support, he will beat her. All right. I don't care what committee she sits on and runs. They don't like her. And, even those who do say that it's just time for someone else. Right. This isn't working. It's just time. And by the way, you cannot make fun of Joe Biden and be a hypocrite. Okay. I'm talking about Joe Biden's mental capacity. Maybe John won't say it, but I will. She's all fizzled out, folks. She's Mitch McConnell in the House. It's over. These people who are lacking the mental capacity to deal with the issues that are going to make us a failed superpower if we don't address them have got to go. Otherwise, it's over for us. It's over for your kids. It's over for your grandkids. It's over for you right now. You're not going to go to the grave and not experience it. You are. It's upon us. So that's my 2 cents. John, as always, thank you for joining. Come back, brother, anytime, and give us an update on how you're doing.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it, and all my love to Laura.
Will do, brother. All the best. Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Back to you as yours as well. John O'Shea, ladies and gentlemen, John O'Shea. Listen, one of very, very few people who would go and, stand side by side with Matt Gaetz and the few others who are willing to actually give the voters the representation that not only are they told they're going to get when they vote for somebody, but the one they want and deserve. Do we not deserve it anymore? That's the question. We'll find out when we see the vote tallies in elections like Texas 12, the primary. Because if he wins the primary, he will be the next congressman. It's period. It's end of story. It's game over. And then just to give you a little bit of background before I go on break, Chris Putnam was high on her tail, and she was going to lose in 2020. And a lot of people who saw the internal polling said, you know, Putnam was up. It was close, but he was up. And then Trump, you know, nobody blames Trump for this. They get it. But she's a backstabbing piece of trash. I'm sorry. I'm over being nice. And people aren't nice with me anyway. They lie and smear. They lie about me and smear me all the time. So you wanted the bad guy, you got it. All right. The fact of the matter is Trump supported her explicitly, you know, expecting that she would support him when they came at him for January 6th and impeachment again. You know what she did? She faked the cough and went home. I freaking kid you not, and refused to vote by proxy. That's what she did to the president. Meanwhile, she votes by proxy all the time. I should have asked John what the total count is in this session alone. Last I checked, I think with John, it was like 24 or something. I don't even know. But that's the kind of lack of spine, backstabbing, betraying, typical politician crap you're going to get with Kay Granger. All right. So the government you elect is the government you deserve. And right now, I tried telling people this before 2022, and it got a lot of pushback from it. Having an R after your last name does not make you a Republican. Having a D after your last name does make you a Democrat. So Republicans, listen, Democrats push their party to be the way they wanted them to be. Are there orphan Democrats who are like, man, they're nuts now and they're far to the left and I don't like this woke stuff? Yeah, but they took that chance because the majority, and then they just try to make their opponents look even worse. That's how they're keeping those orphans. And by the way, Republicans are making that job easier because they're traitors. They look at how they treat their own voters and say, what the hell with them? You can't precipitate the realignment, even if it's organic, if you have an identity crisis. All right, I'm going to go on a rant more and more as time goes on here, but let me go ahead and take a real quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you what's been going on in the Republican donor class for weeks now and why everybody knew that CNN poll was coming. Everybody had a response all teed up and why CNN just loves it. All right, but let's take a break real quick. Incompetence, weather events, thank God. Thank God. What is it, Ian? What's that storm's name? Thank God that thing is hooking north. Lee. Sorry, it's Hurricane Lee. And Crew Kid. Yes, the media absolutely would have loved nothing more for that thing to barrel into a Republican-led state. I mean, these are not good people. These are bad people we're talking about here. They'll take any opportunity to gain political points they could possibly get. But think about it. Are you prepared? You're not prepared. I'm telling you, you are not. Right now, 4patriots.com is running an incredible sale. Remember, I told you that the new Patriot Power Generator 2000X can stack. You can actually get that in one of the packages, the new stack for free, which gives you even more power. But alone, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X is strong enough to power your phones, you or your family's medical devices, even your refrigerator. And you can get one right now by going to 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 at checkout, even with those deals. Buy one, get one free stuff, and that will give you an additional 10% off. And you can see it right there. There are sales right now that are up to 75% off. They're throwing in additional booster generators for them. The panels included. There are different packages which you can choose from, and they are fantastic. Right now is the time to get them. Right after the Labor Day sale, I can't believe they're still running this stuff, but they are. 4patriots.com. Use the promo code once more again, TPP10 at checkout, and that will get you 10% off even the bundled pack. By the way, this code is only for your first purchase, of course, but make it count. Use it for something exactly like this and save yourself a good deal of money and make sure that your family is prepared. And their 6 month, 3 months packages as well are just amazing. The survival food lasts up to 30 years. They're delicious. Laura and I absolutely love 4 Patriots. We do. All with our heart and soul. We have them for our family, and you should have them for yours as well. Also, before we go, tell you about a deal with Jam and Bean. Send us your feedback. We love to hear all the great feedback that we get from Jam and Bean, all right, which is always good. Coffee, the medium, whether you're getting a K-cup because you're like me, and sometimes you need one, just like now, by the way, to get one on the fly. You need a cup on the fly. Or if you also, like me, like to have freshly roasted beans sent your way, you grind them up the way you do it, you brew it the way you do it. They have something for everyone, delicious flavors. Also, gourmet popcorn that's completely natural. And then their syrups. And then I showed you some of their new freeze-dried candy. The Skittles taste like Skittles. The Starburst tastes like Starburst. It doesn't matter. You sign up for a subscription now. Use the promo code TPP40 at the bottom of the screen, and you will get 40% off your initial subscription costs right off the bat. And yet still, every month when it renews, you're going to get the original 10% discount. So it's a fantastic deal. Get it while you can. And then also send us your feedback because we would love to hear about it. All right. It's always great. They are Patriot-owned. Speaking of courage, when courage counts during COVID, they were right there back to back with people like Barnes and I. And they're a great company to support and have a great product. Their medium full body K-Cup is the best medium roast K-Cup I have ever had. And I'm a dark roast guy. Later, sometimes in the day, like my mediums, and that's all I'll drink. Everything else, honestly, it's like piss water to me. Theirs is delicious. Jamandbean.com, TPP40 at checkout. TPP40 at checkout. All right, let me tell you the story. And if you are on locals, then you know this already, so bear with me, and I'll try to make it quick, and we'll get to some of your questions because Laura hasn't been in here grabbing questions. I'm going to have to recycle them and give myself some time. I grabbed a few already, but a couple weeks ago, we're going on like maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's been a process, and you've seen the headlines. DeSantis donors leaving, and they lie and they say it's because DeSantis took on a 6-week abortion ban, and that's too draconian for them. They're full of crap. That's what these GOP donors are. That's who they are. That's what they are. They will stab you in the back the second it becomes beneficial to do that for them. All right. And they've been thinking, DeSantis' poll numbers are collapsing. And I think at this point, even though he's in second in several of the polls, he could lose it to Vivek or someone else. We need to find another horse because I think he's tainted and it's not working. Jeff Rowe, working over at Never Back Down PAC, has been taking money from donors because he's desperately in need of it to keep the DeSantis grift going. And in replacement for that, he's told people that we will poll other names head to head because they're interested in other people. And the person who got the most interest was not Nikki Haley. There was always that group there that liked her, but also liked Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. Now, he appeared to be getting even some of those McCarthy donors in California and certainly some of the Wall Street people, 3 of them that I told you about. I had spoken with 3 Wall Street, pretty big donor cats. One of them was going to Trump because he said, the hell with this. I'm not ending up on the ass end of this thing. Donald Trump is going to win, and I'm not going to be shut out from his administration because because of my pride. I'm out and I'm going to Donald Trump. The other one was still up in the air, didn't know where they were going to go, but really were between Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. The other one said, I'm going to Tim Scott. He's always been good to us. It's been a revolving door here for him on Wall Street, which is funny, but that's his committee assignment. So does that suit the needs of South Carolinian voters? No, not really, but he's a politician. What can I tell you? He's a traditional Republican. Okay. We need to stop and we need to get another name for that because you're not a Reaganite. You're not a Reaganite. You're not a traditional Republican. A traditional Republican from the 1930s and 40s and beyond until the Nixon era were America First Republicans. They put America first in foreign policy. They put America first in the economy. And that's it. American industry comes first. The American worker comes first. Trump did not make up the phrase America First. That is what Republicans used. Then after the Reagan era, that's when you get the Tim Scott kind of Republican, the Mitt Romney Republican, certainly the Nikki Haley Republican. Because of his ABC rule, anything but communism, Reagan did let in a bunch of neocons, but the Gipper himself was not a neocon. However, it is of that breed that people like Nikki Haley were born. All right. There was nothing like it before that. And listen, the shifting was moving to Tim Scott. That's why when you saw their polls leaked by the New York Times, the pre-debate strategy and all that stuff, you didn't only see Trump and DeSantis head to head. You saw Tim Scott head to head. and nobody else, right? And that was because people who were giving Never Back Down. Never Back Down is not really DeSantis's PAC. It has been supporting DeSantis, but Jeff Rowe cares about money and money only. So it's nothing for him to say, yeah, give me the 50 grand and I'll throw the head-to-heads. We'll start to research how Tim Scott's going to do against Donald Trump too. And by the way, you saw him actually doing slightly better in Iowa against Donald Trump than DeSantis was doing at that point. That's for those donors. That's a scam for those donors to get more money from them. Okay. This way, if Never Back Down needs to jump ship from Ron DeSantis, they can do so and go to Tim Scott. Well, Haley's debate performance, Tim Scott did not have a good one. Somebody's got to get some kind of, the mo. Someone's got to get the big mo. And a lot of people thought that in the media and in the donor class that Nikki Haley had a good debate performance. The polls clearly did not show that. Vivek won, going, by the way, they hate him, going also with Haley. And she did well, but it really was, most polls really showed DeSantis coming in second and Haley coming in like a third. Mike Pence and Tim Scott just didn't have a moment. And actually, Mike Pence came across pretty negatively. So that's not Mike Pence's role. That's not Chris Christie's role. They have two separate roles in this, and I'll get to that. Anyway, it looked like it was going to be Tim Scott until he had a lackluster performance, and the Haley people started launching this behind-the-scenes attack on him, which donors were telling me just on Saturday. I'm telling you exactly the impact of this. On Saturday, I was speaking with one, and I'm going to tell you exactly that this attack worked. Tim Scott can't win the presidency because he's not married. All right. They were telling everybody this. A bachelor cannot win the presidency, especially, are you ready? A black bachelor. So this became a thing. And you might have seen there was actually a poll. I believe it was conducted by JPL or others. I can't remember who did it. But I did see that they had leaked it, and they did it on purpose because they were trying to combat what they no doubt had been hearing, which is that people are telling big donors that Tim Scott can't win as a bachelor. So they released a poll saying that Iowa voters don't care. And especially because they focused a lot on Iowa. Why? It's very evangelical. They're never going to accept a non-married man. And he released a poll saying that nobody cares. Trump voters don't care. Non-Trump voters don't care. Nobody cares. Excuse me. Hiccup. And I got to tell you, I actually think that poll was probably correct. I don't think anybody cares whether or not you're a bachelor in this day and age. Do some maybe? Sure, that's the way statistics work. But I don't think it would prevent you from winning a general election if you're a bachelor. Americans have dealt with cheating husbands who are worse than bachelors, in my opinion. I don't really care if you're married, if you're not observing the vow you gave. I'd rather be single. And I think, that I would rather someone be single. But again, I just don't think that that's the major concern on most voters. But it was working with the donors. It was working. On Saturday, I had spoken to somebody who believed it wholeheartedly. And they said they had pulled away. This is a DeSantis fleer. They gave a lot of money to DeSantis. I'm going to Nikki Haley because I don't think that he can win being a bachelor. And I'm like, you heard this. This is a load of crap. Didn't matter what I said. They bought it. They had already heard from her a while ago. Because a lot of these people, even if they're not going to support them, they still entertain them. They'll still go to their fundraisers, have them at their house. They want to have a say. They want to be at the table. That's what these people prioritize. It's weird. It's like a social status thing, right? So it's easy then to later go and, switch allegiances because you already, hosted them at your house or something, in Texas or California or New York or wherever these people are from. All right. So anyway, if you're CNN, so what does that have to do with the CNN poll? All right. They cooked that puppy up 100%. If you've ever heard how these people talk and how they are not trustworthy at all. There are some pollsters, like I said, we use them to show you one very, very bad example of a poll that is lagging the rest of the tranches to get to consensus. And CNN was one of a few we cited, but CNN was like the worst. And even still now, they're Trump bearish, which means they have Trump, of course, in the lead, but they have his opponents still higher. Mainly Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, who they still had DeSantis dropping by 8. Nikki Haley up by 5, and Donald Trump, I believe, rising by 5 or 8, something as well, but still remaining in the bearish tranche. Trust the tranche. All right. If you're the liberals at CNN, folks, at the polling desk, right? And SSRS is obviously just willing to do anything. You're responsible for tricks like Gillum plus 12 a few days before the election and then silently releasing a PDF that corrects it to Gillum plus 2. All right. You're capable of all of this. Go back, Google them if you want right now, or DuckDuckGo them because I don't use Google. But go and look right now. Go listen to the tapes. These are 100% people capable of doing this. If you want the grift to continue, and the last thing that you want is the Republican Party to consolidate behind Donald Trump and start spending that money, the donor money that concedes, all right, he's going to be the nominee. What else can I do if I don't want to give directly to him? Well, those registration things we've been talking about. How do I know? Because I mean, I've been asked to give pitches to some of these people and to, tell how would this be done? They don't want that to happen. They want someone else. And by the way, the consultant class in the Republican Party, it's in Jeff Rowe's interest to continue with this grift, right? So he can just move from DeSantis to Haley or DeSantis to Tim Scott. He did it before, right? And so many of the consultants from Walker walked on over to Ted Cruz when Walker failed. They don't want the consolidation and the unity. They want to use the consultants, the GOP consultant class, they being CNN leftists, they want to use them in their greed to keep the grift going because, of course, it's beneficial to them and their side. They know full well Nikki Haley has zero chance to win an election. That material that came after the release of that poll was completely concocted beforehand. Completely. And then the photos of all the people. She never gets anybody at her events. All of a sudden, she had this number of people at her events, these seniors and stuff, writing 47%, 7%, or whatever she was writing. And how bad, this is why it pisses me off, because listen, I have to start calling out the polling misinformation on the right this year. I think some people misunderstand what it is I do. All right. I was not a critic of left-wing pollsters in the media and university because I'm some right-wing guy. I was a critic of them because they were using propaganda at the expense of my industry that I care deeply about. This time, the polling propaganda is on the right. I'll tell you when it starts to shift to the left again, if it does. But it's the right, from Team DeSantis to others, and now Team Haley and CNN and whatnot. Notice they weren't supporting DeSantis by doing the DeSantis plus 2 back in April when everyone else had Trump up by 15 to 30 points. They were sowing discord. Right? So you have to understand it like this. While NBC, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Harvard Harris, Emerson, Rasmussen, all these other pollsters have got Trump up between 15 and 30 points, their motive to pop this DeSantis plus 2 out of left field with totally different margins than anybody else and levels of support than anybody else isn't a mistake. It's not a methodological error, but it also wasn't to the benefit of Ron DeSantis. It is to the detriment of you. It's to the detriment of Donald Trump. That is true. They hate him, but it's to sow discord and to prevent unity. All right. And it's for the they're dangling a carrot in front of these crooked, greedy GOP consultants. And they bite the damn, well, they don't even get the carrot, but they go to bite it every single time. And how damaging can something like this be to public perception? Well, here you have Trump, okay? Biden is only leading Trump by 0.4% due to morning consult shifted from Trump plus 1 to Biden plus 3. They do that quite a bit. The Messenger Harvard Harris poll was Trump plus 1. I don't know what that is, unless they shifted again. The New York Post poll. Oh, it's the Yahoo News poll, which is hilarious because YouGov has Trump up by 1, and of course Yahoo News is using the same data set as YouGov, which was only a few days before it, and they're all getting it from the same panel. So that's odd. So you have this Biden plus 6 that's skewing it. Otherwise, Trump would be up. He's up in 4 of the last 8 polls. Biden's up in 3 of the last 8 polls with 1 tie. And very clearly, if you drop the Yahoo News poll, Trump would be in the lead. All right, this is the thing with, I love Real Clear Politics, but sometimes to me, it's a little bit ridiculous to still have August 17th in there. That should be dropped. There's too many polls to keep August 17th in there. All right. But remember, Trump is up in more polls than Biden is up over the last 8 polls conducted. Yet Biden's lead in the Real Clear Politics average is 0.4%. Keep that in your hand, right? Now, here's this bogus poll by Nikki Haley. Where is it? Here we go. Now, here's this bogus poll by CNN. It's marginal, folks, the difference in the spread and the RCP average. Biden plus 0.7. Only 0.3 of a percentage point. Nikki Haley is only led in 1 of the last 3 polls that have been conducted. She wasn't anywhere close. In the Fox News poll that was just recently conducted, we had her at 34% in our recent poll. She wasn't even worth showing to the public. It's an embarrassment. And yet they come up with this. You may even notice Fox News only has her at 36, right? Very close to our 34. Harvard Harris had her at 38, and they've been pretty bullish on her for a while. Emerson had her at 37. You starting to see a pattern here? Now, out pops the CNN poll. Not only is the first one to have her in and above the 40s, but, Rasmussen a while ago had her at 45. Excuse me. They have her at 49. And even though not in the last month, but over the last year, Haley is only led in 2 of the polls conducted, the average is still roughly similar to Trump plus Biden, who have far more polls in the average. And that is called a psyop. Okay? And all of these people who bought it hook, line, and sinker, you're stupid. There is 0 chance that Nikki Haley outperforms Ron DeSantis against Joe Biden. 0 chance. At least Ron DeSantis is getting some of those Trump voters who are diehard Trump or bust. He's marginal, very marginal, but at least he's getting some. Nikki Haley gets none of them. 0. DeSantis also does better with working class voters as far as them actually saying, yes, I would go and I would go out and vote for Ron DeSantis if he was the nominee. She gets an abysmal number of them. Ron DeSantis, while Donald Trump gets in the 70s with white evangelicals, at least Ron DeSantis gets around 66%. Nikki Haley gets 54%. And that doesn't take into consideration how many evangelicals would stay home if Nikki Haley was the nominee. This is one of the most dishonest things I've seen this cycle. It's not the most I've ever seen. It's been pretty bad. In the last 10 years or so. But this is one of the more egregious ones. And I got 2 questions that I think are overlapping. Clifford, I'll get to yours. Cliff, I'll get to yours soon. But DJ had offered one a while ago, and I saw it in the corner of my eye and grabbed it. And while I'm on this, I might as well. But listen, I have no other excuse other than I want to take a pull on my vaporizer. I'm being 100% honest with you. So give me 2 seconds. I got to get it from the charger. All right. And then let me get a drink of water. And we'll come back and we'll answer some of this. Bear with me for 1 second. All right. So DJ said, should we be adding 1 to 2 points to Trump because of social bias? Okay. That is a fantastic question. It is time to add back the social bias indicators. Why? For a while, it had gotten slightly better. It's not because of Biden at all. It's because for a while, there were some voters that simply were saying, it doesn't really matter anymore. Trump's not on the ballot. But now that Trump is running again, I think it does matter. In the, where are you? The national one we had conducted. They may have been in there just for the sake of being in there. Hold on. They were not. Okay. So it is time, because I think it is at least a valid point DJ is making. During the Trump years and Of course, there have been other examples of social bias without Trump, but this was about being mocked by the media. And this was about being mocked in your social circles if you supported Donald Trump. It's very different now. Even though we're all talking about how Donald Trump is overperforming his strength in 2020 and his strength in 2016, there should be more to that conversation. And we should at least entertain, and we'll study it, and we'll research it, and we'll find out before we jump to any conclusions. But I think it's at least reasonable to suspect or to have a hypothesis that Donald Trump would even outperform his polling now. Even though he's outperforming his prior strength, his prior polling support, his prior levels, I think I'm talking about him outperforming even that. Why? Because now it's no longer about just being mocked by your friends or, being mocked if you live in a suburb or you're a young black male who lives in an urban area. Now it's about being thrown in jail. I am also seeing, and I don't have some with, I should have, if I knew you were going to ask this question, I'll just make sure I incorporate this into some of the work we do when we do poll. But I am already seeing people abandon surveys or refuse to take surveys and make some kind of a statement that indicates they are not comfortable telling people who they support, because in this day and age, you may end up behind bars. This is so disgusting that this is happening in the United States of America. But DJ, I think we have to it's reasonable to suspect that is the case. All right. So we should, in fact, start trying to measure the social bias again. All right. Which is, Clifford brings up a very similar question. It's just specific with black voters. What are the real numbers for Trump among black voters? And that's a really good question. So in Florida, he's tend to do better with black voters. In certain states, that's the case, than nationally, even though we ourselves never really found that to be the case. So, we did find it to be the case. We just didn't overestimate his support with black voters like other pollsters did. Now, let me bring up what it was we had him at in 2020, for instance, in a state like Florida. All right. So we had him leading Biden by nearly 3%, 2.6%. And among, where are you? Where's race? I may have to go into market site to figure it out. I may have put the wrong thing on the sheet. It's just the sheet is so much easier to pull up. Come on, tell me I didn't do race here right now. I'll go back and I'll find it because I want to know. Yeah, it looks like I did not. Wow, what the hell? Being in a rush, there's something to say for right before elections when you're very, very busy and you may forget a column. Looks like I forgot a column in that spreadsheet, which means I have to go back and do it because people always go back and look at my old work. So I need to make sure race is in there. But let's go back to 2020. Let's pull up, there's the Sunshine State Battleground poll. Here is what's that one? I got to make sure I know which one is which, okay? There's the prelim raw. Okay, this is probably it. Let's see where the crosstabs are. Age. This is the yeah, here it is. All right, so let me re-edit it. Add race. Let me add race. Oh, race and ethnicity is in here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I can because of what we got going on. Yeah. Although I'd love to, give him any other day.
What about 10 minutes?
It's just a matter of I don't know how long I'm going to take with the 2:00 appointment I have, which is going to be late. So sorry, somebody wanted me on their program and I don't want to tell them if I'm not going to be able to. All right, so here it is. Let me get you that. That's because Cliff, it's a really good question. All right, so among black voters in Florida, you got about 15%. All right, this time in Florida, he's at like 20. And then also nationally, which I can bring up real quick. That one is really easy for me to put up on the screen. Where are you? In our final national poll, where are you? There it is. In our final national poll, we had Trump at, I want to say 12. I'm usually pretty good at remembering this stuff. It was a Biden +4 poll, 12.3% with black voters in final poll before 2020. If you look at the national exit polls, it says he got 12%. Exactly that. Some of the other ones like Pew say he got more like 8. I don't think so. I actually think Pew is wrong. I think he did get like 10, 12% because the jump in the ship. If it was only black men, then I would say, okay, there could only be a 2-point difference between 16. And by the way, we had him at like 8% in 2016. And he got, I think got 8%, something like that. So very, very, very close. Where is the presidential? I'm trying to find the presidential crosstabs, the very last one we did. Okay, this is probably it right here. And so we're not a pollster that has, grossly overestimated his support with black voters. All right. And wow, man, it does look like that one is not the right one. Is this one it? Come on, tell me this is it. We had him at about 19%. This is Florida. We had him about 19% nationally this time. So I think that if he were to get between 15 and 20%, don't be surprised. Do not be surprised. It is possible. And why? Because of every 4 years when we move from one general election to another, people, in 2020, we got a lot of young black men who were like, don't tell my auntie, don't tell my mama, don't tell my grandmother, they'll kick my butt, and I remember, by the way, Spectrum like berated this young man, who voted early in North Carolina. I remember it. And the guy was just like, I don't want to tell you. And they were like, come on, tell us who you voted for. You'll be on the news. And before you realized he would be on 6 o'clock national television, he said he voted for Trump. And then he was like terrified and ran away from the camera, because that's real. But every 4 years, a lot can happen in 4 years. A lot of demographic changes happen in 4 years. A lot of things change in 4 years. And now some of those guys might not be that afraid anymore. And plus, it's more than that. What is going on with the state persecution and prosecution of Donald Trump is most definitely going to make him relatable. David Axelrod did not have a meltdown on television begging them not to release that mugshot because he feared like more white people would support Donald Trump. He was worried that the people he knows are feel like the system is always beating down them are gonna feel potentially like that he's being martyred. All right, so that will increase support among that vote. There's no doubt. There is no doubt that he is going to do better. It's only a matter of how much. And the thing with RFK, I see a lot of questions about RFK, and I tweeted about that today. This is a bigger story than you're being led to believe. So what the DNC, Democrats, and the media is helping do to RFK is the most significant attempt to rig they have made the most significant changes in order to favor a candidate than anybody has ever done before, ever. Okay. Moving the primary schedule the way they did, removing first in the nation statuses. This is a huge deal. And I think Democratic Party voters don't understand is you now have ensured that you are the war party, the big donor party, and the corporate party. And you will never again, at least not until these rules change, you will not get an underdog, true progressive, little guy and girl, speaking for the, champion of the little man, little girl, whatever. You're never going to get that again. The point of putting Iowa and New Hampshire first is not that, oh, well, they're white and we want white people to pick. It's not that at all. Then the history of that, the tradition of that is because they're cheaper states to compete in, and low funded or not as well funded, big donor candidates are not the only ones who can compete. And that you would never have gotten, hey Demis, you never would have gotten Barack Obama under the current system that they just changed to keep Joe Biden in power, to screw RFK. You would never have gotten Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton would have beaten him handily. in order to clap like a seal, you know, like the little guy, in order to clap like a seal, you just threw everything away. It's sad, and you don't even realize it. It's pretty pathetic. And yeah, Chris Wilson only makes fun of, at W. And listen, I've always been nice to Chris, but I saw his wise ass remark to somebody on Twitter mocking me. Pollster. So, dude, listen, bottom line is, when your record is as good as mine, I'll bother even pretending you exist. But you're a GOP establishment hack pollster. You always have been. You have always made gross mistakes across different House districts. And the point you're making to attack CNN, who else did they attack recently? The garbage poll thing continues. They put up, I think it was Premise 538, which, listen, don't bother, I'm not someone who stands up for 538, but there are numerous problems. Locals, you know it. I discussed many of these issues. There are numerous problems. He's an unskew the polls 2.0. That's all he is. All right. So his arguments don't make sense. And he just attacks people who listen, WPA, they poll for all the establishment people, the Club for Growth people. So take it with a grain, folks. That's where they're coming from. And they're polling for DeSantis's PAC and stuff like that. So what do you expect? All right, but yeah, everyone's wrong except him. Okay, Alan Fun plus 6 or whatever you had. It was some ridiculous nonsense. I have to go back and get the WPA polls from 2016. Come on, get out of here. When you come close to me, then I'll give you the moniker of respect that I used to give you. But you want to come after me because you're insecure. And I'm sorry to hear that. What are the chances that Trump loses some of the white vote overall, but does better with white working class and minority class voters in terms of margins and vote share in 2024 versus 2020? That is one of the very likely scenarios that we are not very likely. I would say likely scenarios that we're exploring right now. Also, we are exploring the potential, like Republicans won the popular vote in 2022, but they lost battleground areas. Could it be that Trump just does really better in high population centers, but still doesn't carry those states like New York because of that, and yet loses some battleground states? It's a possibility. The reason why I don't think that's what's going on with Trump here is because Trump didn't lose any white share and support from all of the polls we've done in 2022 to current. All right. He hasn't lost like Adam Laxalt was under. Hold on one second. Hold on, guys. You might as well hear the conversation. I'm done really soon. I'm going to wrap it right now, actually.
Tell everybody thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Laura saying she wants me to tell you guys that she's sorry that we have to actually end it too, even though it's a Q&A. We'll leave more time for Q&A on Monday.
Yes.
Okay? Because
I'll give an extra half an hour for Q&A.
yeah. Oh, a half an hour. That's a lot.
Well,
Woo!
like the you problem.
All right. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea. All right. You know what? She is right. I do got a boogie. And I do want to try to squeeze in something for Steve Gruber if I can. I'm just not sure I can. But I do have to boogie. So thanks, everybody. Don't forget, peoplespundit.locals.com is the place to join all of this stuff. Check out the website on Big Data Poll right now. The public polling project is link is in the description, but I even have the Peach State form up right now that you can go check out. In the front page, things are changing. The public polling project page is changing. Go check it out. We're currently I think almost 20% funded on the Peach State poll, which is really cool. All right. Nothing but love for you. I got to go. Have a safe weekend. Locals, I'm going to tell you what book we got to get for the book club today. All right. So all the best. I'll talk to you guys soon. She's giving me the hook. Giving me the hook. One more thing. There's no chance Nikki Haley can beat Joe Biden. I'm out.